The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the quiet suburban street, bathing the houses in a warm, golden light. In the small yard of their modest home, Sarah, a sweet and gentle young girl with bright eyes that seemed to reflect the world in wonder, sat arranging her toys. Her wheelchair rested nearby, a familiar presence that she had learned to navigate with determination and care. Her father moved about the yard with purposeful calm, tending to the garden while keeping a vigilant watch over her. Every small giggle, every squeal of delight, was met with his warm smile, but behind it was a constant alertness. Sarah had been born with a physical disability that made even simple movements a challenge, yet she had grown into a bright, courageous girl. Her father's life revolved around her safety and happiness. He had built ramps, installed handrails, and adapted their home to ensure she could move freely. But more than structural protection, he provided constant vigilance. To him, protection meant anticipating danger before it arrived and reacting swiftly. Every shadow, every unexpected sound, demanded his attention. Recently, his instincts had been on high alert. The neighborhood HOA, normally a minor irritant with its trivial complaints about lawns or fences, had become a source of unease. At the center of this tension was Karen, a woman known to neighbors for her sharp tongue and controlling nature. Her presence had grown increasingly intrusive. She appeared at odd hours to inspect properties, leaving passive-aggressive notes that suggested hidden threats. Her seemingly casual smiles often carried a cold undertone, her friendly greetings masked scrutiny. The father had noticed Karen's behavior almost immediately. One morning, she lingered by the edge of their yard, crouched slightly behind a tree, her eyes fixed on Sarah with an intensity that made his stomach twist. There was no mistaking the hostility beneath her calm facade. Something about her gaze screamed danger, a silent warning that she would not be deterred by polite refusals or passive avoidance. The father's instincts flared. This woman was dangerous, and Sarah, despite her strength, was vulnerable. Despite his worry, he maintained a calm exterior. Sarah, unaware of the undercurrents of hostility, continued her playful arrangements, her toys forming little imaginary worlds along the garden path. Her father engaged with her, talking about the stories behind each figure, helping her place them just so. He laughed when she made up imaginative adventures, making the moment feel safe and ordinary. Yet beneath the surface, he was constantly scanning, calculating, and preparing for the possibility that Karen's hostility could escalate. He had begun to notice patterns. Karen would sometimes appear at the same time each afternoon, as though marking their movements, observing without interacting. Occasionally, she would mutter under her breath, her words too quiet for anyone else to hear but enough to set his nerves on edge. He began documenting everything: times, behaviors, suspicious actions. Even neighbors whispered in hushed tones about Karen's past incidents, outbursts, harassment, strange obsessions, but fear or indifference kept them silent. The responsibility of protection rested entirely on his shoulders. The father took practical precautions. He checked locks, reinforced the doors and windows, and even installed cameras at strategic points around the house. He taught Sarah small safety protocols: how to call for help, what to do if someone approached, ways to stay calm, but he always emphasized that she would never face danger alone. His vigilance became both armor and reassurance. Sarah's laughter and innocent chatter were shields against the tension he could not fully remove, but he carried the weight of responsibility quietly, without burdening her. That afternoon, as the sun sank toward the horizon, Karen appeared again. This time she lingered closer to the fence, crouching slightly, her gaze sharp and calculating. The father's heart tightened. Every instinct screamed that the situation was escalating, that Karen's fascination with their home and, specifically, with Sarah, was growing dangerous. He moved closer to his daughter, subtly positioning himself so that if Karen advanced, he would be between them, a living shield. Sarah noticed the slight change in her father's demeanor, the tension in his posture, and looked up at him with innocent concern. "Is everything okay, Dad?" she asked, her voice soft and trusting. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face, masking the fear that churned inside. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Just play, I'm right here." He reinforced safety not only through words but by proximity, by the protective stance he instinctively maintained. The neighborhood seemed deceptively peaceful, but the father knew that appearances could be deceiving. Karen's quiet patience, her repeated presence, and the intensity of her gaze hinted at an impending storm. He felt it in his chest, a rising tension that demanded readiness, not fear. Every moment he spent with Sarah became a mix of tenderness and vigilance, laughter and calculated observation. As the sun dipped lower, Stretching long shadows across the yard, Karen remained at the edge, watching, waiting. The father's eyes never left her. In his mind, he began running scenarios. What to do if she entered the yard, how to respond if she tried to take Sarah, where to position them to maximize safety. This wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. And in that preparation lay the promise that Sarah would not face danger alone. By evening, the yard had transformed into a stage of quiet tension. Sarah continued to play, her father ever watchful, his body and mind primed for protection. Karen's presence, silent yet menacing, marked the first overt shadow over their peace, a shadow that foreshadowed the chaos yet to come. The father's determination was absolute. Whatever threat approached, whatever violence lurked in the dark corners of their seemingly calm neighborhood, Sarah would remain safe. Every muscle, every thought, every heartbeat of his existed for her protection. And in that calm before the storm, the bond between father and daughter, woven from love, trust, and unwavering vigilance, was a fortress. No lurking shadow, no hostile gaze, no malicious intent could breach it, at least, not without a battle that he was ready to fight. The late afternoon air hung heavy with the scent of blooming jasmine, and the golden sunlight cast long, warm shadows across the yard. Sarah was busy arranging her toys in neat little rows, completely absorbed in her imaginative world. Her father moved nearby, pruning flowers and checking the garden, but his eyes never left her for long. Every instinct he possessed whispered that danger was near, and his body was already braced for action, though he had no idea how imminent it would be. Karen appeared at the edge of the yard like a shadow creeping across the sunlight. She moved with unnatural stealth, her eyes locked on Sarah, her hands concealing something under her jacket. The father noticed immediately, an unease prickled at the back of his neck. He set down his pruning shears and squared his shoulders, ready to act the moment she stepped closer. Before anyone could react, the first shot rang out, a sharp, explosive sound that shattered the calm of the suburban street. Sarah froze, her toys scattering as her eyes went wide with terror. The sound of the gunshot sent a jolt of adrenaline through her father. In an instant, all hesitation vanished. He sprinted toward Sarah with a singular purpose: protect her at any cost. Karen lunged toward Sarah, trying to grab her and drag her toward her garage. "We need to hide this," she hissed, her voice dripping with malice. But the father was already there, placing himself between his daughter and the threat. He scooped Sarah into his arms, shielding her small frame with his own. Every muscle tensed as he pushed back against Karen's grasp, his mind a rapid calculation of movement, distance, and strategy. The struggle was chaotic. Karen was relentless, her strength fueled by obsession. She pulled, twisted, and tried to overpower him, but his determination was absolute. Every instinct he had as a father, as a protector, guided his actions. He held Sarah close, whispering urgently to calm her, "It's okay, Sarah. Stay with me, I've got you. I won't let her hurt you." His voice was both command and comfort, anchoring her terror in the certainty of his protection. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, their faces pale with shock, but none dared intervene. The father realized that in this moment, he was the only shield standing between Sarah and a threat that could end her life. He moved strategically, positioning himself so that every angle Karen could take was blocked. He maneuvered toward the corner of the yard, where the sun's fading light met the shadows of the house, giving him better control of the struggle. Sarah clung to him, her small hands gripping his shirt. Despite the fear in her eyes, she trusted him completely. Her faith in her father's protection was absolute. That trust gave him strength, a surge of courage that burned hotter than fear. He shouted at Karen, commanding her to stop, each word sharp and unyielding. "Back off, leave us alone." Karen hesitated briefly, her face contorted with rage, before she lunged again. The father twisted, blocking her with his forearm, while keeping Sarah safely cradled against his chest. The physicality of the struggle was brutal. He felt the strain in his muscles, the ache in his arms from holding Sarah, the tension in his legs as he resisted Karen's force. But fear never overtook him. Every action was deliberate, every motion a protective barrier for his daughter. The gunshot had echoed through the neighborhood, and though the chaos drew attention, the father knew that panic could be dangerous. He kept his movements controlled, his voice steady. "Sarah, hold tight, don't let go of me," he said, and she did, trusting him completely. That trust was a shield, almost as important as his own body, and it gave him clarity in the chaos. Karen's attempts to drag Sarah toward the garage grew more frantic, her movements sharper, more dangerous. The father, anticipating her every action, shifted, twisted, and blocked, refusing to give her an inch. Sweat ran down his face, his heart pounded in his chest, but he never faltered. He was a wall, unmovable, unyielding, and fully committed to keeping his daughter alive. Eventually, Karen's aggression met the force of his determination. Realizing she could not overcome him, she staggered back, her face twisted with frustration and rage. The father's eyes never left her, his grip on Sarah tightening protectively. She clung to him, still trembling, and he whispered soothing words, holding her close and rocking slightly to calm her heartbeat. "You're safe now, Sarah. I've got you. Nothing's going to hurt you." Karen retreated toward the shadows of her garage, her eyes still fixed on them, a silent promise that she wasn't done yet. But the immediate danger had passed, and the father, though shaken and exhausted, had succeeded in his mission. He had protected Sarah, kept her safe from harm, and proven that his role as her guardian was absolute. Sarah, still trembling, pressed against him, her trust in her father unshakable. She whispered, "Thank you, Dad," her voice small but full of relief. He smiled down at her, brushing her hair back from her face, and said firmly, "I will always protect you. No one can ever take that from us." As the yard settled into uneasy silence, the father remained alert. Karen had not fled entirely, her retreat was temporary, and he knew she would return. The father began planning, scanning for evidence, considering security improvements, and mentally preparing for what might come next. He would not let Sarah face danger alone, not now, not ever. This section closes with the father holding Sarah in his arms, exhausted but unbroken, the embodiment of a protector who had faced mortal danger and emerged victorious. The tension lingers, Karen's threat remains, but for now, Sarah is safe, and her father has proven that nothing will come between them. The sun had barely risen when the father carried Sarah into the house, her small body trembling from the shock of the previous afternoon. Every muscle in his body ached, every nerve still alert, but he forced himself to stay calm. Panic, he knew, could spread fear to Sarah, and she needed reassurance above all else. He laid her gently on the sofa, brushing the hair from her face, and held her close. "You're safe now, Sarah," he whispered, his voice firm and tender all at once. "I've got you. No one can touch you." The attack had left its mark, not just in bruises or cuts, which were thankfully minor, but in the shadow of fear that lingered in Sarah's eyes. She clung to him, pressing her cheek against his chest, seeking the protective embrace that had saved her life. Her father stroked her hair slowly, humming softly to calm her trembling heart. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm right here. You're safe," he repeated, over and over, each word a promise of protection that he intended to keep. He knew the danger wasn't over. Karen had retreated, but her obsession with harming Sarah was evident in the intensity of her earlier attack. Every instinct told him she would return if given a chance. And so, the father's vigilance increased. He began documenting every detail of the incident, the position of Karen's car, the trajectory of the gunshot, the exact words she had spoken. Every note, every photograph, every memory was a piece of evidence, a shield against further violence. While Sarah rested, he contacted the authorities, describing the attack in precise detail. His voice remained calm, controlled, but every sentence carried the weight of a man who had faced a mortal threat and refused to let it harm his child. The police promised to investigate, but he knew bureaucracy moved slowly. For the father, waiting was a dangerous game. Protection could not pause while others deliberated. He also began fortifying their home. Locks were checked and reinforced, cameras installed at all entrances, and escape routes carefully mapped. He moved strategically, teaching Sarah small safety measures without instilling fear. How to call for help if he wasn't nearby, how to stay still and quiet during dangerous moments, and how to trust her instincts while knowing she would never be alone. These lessons were both practical and symbolic, a continuation of his protective role that went beyond the physical act of shielding her. Sarah watched him work, feeling both comforted and emboldened. Despite the trauma, she sensed the unwavering security of her father's presence. She began to regain a measure of normalcy, playing with her toys again, though the previous day's terror lingered in fleeting shadows of her expression. Her father never let her fear dominate, he guided her gently, balancing reassurance with preparation. The father also began observing Karen, suspecting she would not stay away for long. He watched her interactions with neighbors, noted the times she appeared near their property, and tracked every subtle sign of aggression. He maintained detailed records of these observations, knowing that any future encounter would require evidence as well as strength. This dual role of protector and strategist consumed him, yet he accepted it without complaint. Sarah's safety demanded nothing less. Even mundane activities took on new significance. The father taught Sarah how to identify safe areas in the yard, how to position herself if danger appeared, and how to signal him quickly. He practiced escape routes, mapped visibility angles, and instructed her in small but effective measures to stay calm. It was training born of necessity, a shield constructed with both wisdom and care. Meanwhile, the neighborhood's reaction was mixed. Some neighbors whispered behind closed doors, afraid of Karen's wrath. Others avoided interaction entirely. The father recognized that isolation could be dangerous. He maintained communication with those willing to help, forming a subtle network of awareness that extended beyond his own vigilance. He was a lone guardian, but he ensured the lines of support were present, however faint. Karen, predictably, tried to manipulate the situation. She left anonymous notes, questioned witnesses, and attempted to erase any trace of her aggression. But the father anticipated her moves, carefully documenting each attempt, ensuring that no action went unnoticed. His meticulous nature became a weapon as effective as any physical shield, proof that no attack, whether overt or covert, could escape scrutiny. Sarah, in turn, drew strength from his vigilance. She began to regain confidence, small moments of laughter and play returning to her days. Yet she never ventured far from her father's watchful gaze. Every action, every movement, was under the umbrella of his protection. And in those protective measures, she felt safe, not just from harm, but from fear itself. The father knew that the next confrontation with Karen was inevitable. He could sense it in her persistent attention, her stalking presence, and the escalation of her threats. But he was prepared. Every precaution, every strategic move, every layer of vigilance he had constructed was designed to ensure that Sarah would never face danger alone. Night fell over the house, and the father finally allowed himself a brief moment of reflection. He looked at Sarah sleeping peacefully, her face relaxed for the first time since the attack, and felt a surge of determination. Nothing, not Karen's obsession, not the threat of violence, not the fear that lingered in the shadows, could weaken his resolve. He had protected her once, and he would do so again, no matter the cost. By the time the stars appeared in the night sky, the father had fortified not just their home, but the very sense of safety surrounding Sarah. His vigilance was complete, yet it was also a promise. He would remain her shield in every battle, her anchor in every storm. The attack had tested him, but it had also revealed the depths of his strength and the unwavering bond between father and daughter. As sleep finally overtook Sarah, her father stayed awake, patrolling the yard and monitoring the street. He would not let the shadows claim their home. Karen's threat remained, but he was ready. He had prepared, protected, and taught his daughter resilience. And when the time came, he would face her again, ready to defend Sarah with everything he had. In this moment, the father embodied the ultimate protector, vigilant, unyielding, and fully devoted to the safety of the daughter he loved above all else. The storm of danger had passed for now, but the fortress of protection he had built would hold, come what may. The morning was tense, heavy with anticipation. Sarah sat quietly at the kitchen table, her small hands folded, eyes flicking toward the door with a mix of caution and trust. Her father moved beside her, checking locks, reviewing notes, and surveying the yard. He had anticipated this day for weeks, the day when Karen would either strike again or finally face the consequences of her actions. Every step he had taken, every precaution he had installed, every moment of vigilance had led to this confrontation. The father's preparation was meticulous. Cameras had been positioned to capture every angle of the yard and driveway. Witnesses had been briefed and statements collected. Evidence of Karen's harassment, surveillance of their home, and prior threats were compiled into a detailed record for the authorities. But beyond documentation, he remained the first and last line of defense for Sarah. His protective instincts had not waned. If Karen acted recklessly, he would intervene physically, no hesitation, no doubt. It began subtly. Karen appeared at the edge of the street, pacing near their driveway, her eyes fixed on the house like a predator. She had grown bolder in recent days, leaving anonymous notes, attempting to manipulate neighbors, and showing glimpses of obsession that made even the police wary. But this time, the father was ready. "Stay close to me, Sarah," he whispered, kneeling beside her wheelchair. His hand rested reassuringly on her shoulder, a silent promise that she would not face this danger alone. Sarah nodded, her trust in him absolute. He had become both her shield and her strategist, guiding her through this storm with courage and calm. Karen approached the yard deliberately, her expression cold and unyielding. "You think you can stop me?" she shouted, her voice slicing through the morning air. The father stepped forward, positioning himself between her and Sarah. "I've already stopped you once," he said firmly, voice low but resolute. "And I'll do it again if I have to. You will not touch her." For a moment, the tension was unbearable. Karen's gaze flicked to the cameras, then to the neighbors watching cautiously from their windows, and she realized she was cornered. Her attempts at intimidation faltered under the combined weight of evidence, the father's presence, and the scrutiny of witnesses. But she was desperate, unpredictable. Every ounce of her previous aggression simmered just beneath the surface, threatening to erupt. The father never wavered, his posture was strong, his voice unwavering. He kept Sarah close, speaking to her quietly, helping her remain calm amidst the storm. "It's okay, Sarah," he murmured, almost under his breath. "I've got you. Nothing's going to happen. Trust me." Every word reinforced the invisible barrier of safety he had created, not only through action but through the certainty of his love and protection. Authorities, briefed and ready, finally intervened. Karen's attempts to approach were met with officers moving decisively, her options cut off at every turn. But the father remained the central figure in the confrontation, standing firmly between Sarah and Karen until she was securely in custody. His protective presence was both literal and symbolic. He had shielded her from harm physically, emotionally, and psychologically. As Karen was led away, shouting threats that fell on deaf ears, the father allowed himself a moment to exhale. Sarah looked up at him, eyes wide but safe, and he gave her a small smile. "It's over, Sarah. She can't hurt you anymore. You're safe." Her tiny nod and shy smile were the only acknowledgement he needed to know that his mission as her protector had succeeded. Even after Karen was taken into custody, the father remained vigilant. He knew that recovery was not just about removing the immediate threat but about rebuilding a sense of normalcy and trust for Sarah. He reinforced routines, strengthened home security, and continued teaching Sarah small safety practices. The physical danger had ended, but emotional resilience required careful nurturing. Neighbors, once silent in fear, began to recognize the father's courage. Whispers of admiration spread quietly through the street. He had faced violence without hesitation, protected his child against all odds, and refused to allow fear to dominate their lives. His example became a quiet lesson to the community. Vigilance, courage, and love could prevail against cruelty. Sarah, for her part, began to reclaim the small joys of her life. She returned to her toys, to her garden, and to the simple pleasures that had once been threatened. But the experience had left a mark, a deeper understanding of danger, of trust, and of the strength her father carried. She knew, without question, that no one could harm her as long as he stood by her side. The father reflected on the ordeal with a mixture of exhaustion and pride. The battle had tested every limit of his endurance, physically, emotionally, mentally, but it had also revealed the unbreakable bond between him and his daughter. He had acted as her shield, her anchor, and her unwavering protector, proving that love coupled with vigilance could overcome even the most frightening threat. Even as the neighborhood slowly returned to its quiet rhythm, the father's vigilance remained. He patrolled the yard at dusk, checked locks at night, and kept watch over Sarah with the same intensity that had saved her life. Protection was not a single act, it was continuous, unwavering, and absolute. And he had shown that, no matter the danger, no matter the threat, he would never allow harm to come to his daughter. In the final moments of the day, Sarah leaned against him, her small hand resting in his. She smiled, tentative but genuine, and he smiled back, feeling the weight of relief mingled with enduring responsibility. The danger had been confronted, justice had been served, and for now, their home was safe. But more importantly, their bond had been reinforced, an unshakable fortress built of love, courage, and the father's unyielding protection. The story closed not with the absence of fear, but with the triumph of vigilance and the certainty of safety. Sarah had survived, nurtured and shielded by a father who would stop at nothing to defend her. And in that protective embrace, the world, however dangerous, became a little less frightening, because she had the ultimate guardian standing between her and harm.